I would like to first thank everyone for joining us, whether in the present right now or at a future recording. And I wanted to thank our panelists, David Schreiber and Scott Kadish, for delivering this presentation on greening your finances. But as you might have heard, if you joined us early, as David was explaining, this is about more than just removing the fossil fuels from your portfolio. This is an attempt to help address some of the distortions of capitalism. Capitalism may not be perfect right now, but it used to be significantly less toxic, literally, to all of us. And here are some things that we can do to start returning us to a slightly less damaging status quo. I wanted to thank our presenters. David is a former certified financial planner, professional, and socially responsible advisor extraordinary, according to Scott. Before his retirement as a financial advisor from Greenvest and Vanderbilt Securities in 2026, he had nearly 20 years of experience focusing on advising clients on socially responsible investing, financial planning, and retirement planning. A trained and accomplished musician, his real first love, David has a diploma focused in viola performance from the New England Conservatory of Music. Scott Kadish, and David's also our vice president. Scott Kadish is a certified financial planner and a chartered socially responsible investment counselor who, since 2010, has helped his clients in all aspects of their financial lives. He helps his clients invest in their values and co-create living financial plans. Scott lives in Newton, Massachusetts, and in his free time, he volunteers for several climate action groups, including ours. He is our treasurer. He enjoys vegan cooking, all kinds of exercising, and spending time with his two daughters. With that, I will now turn it over.
What I want to talk about is the power that our finances can give us if we use them thoughtfully. We think of our power as activists, voters, consumers, and look at that aspect of it to make a change in society. But there's a lot we can do with our bank accounts, our credit cards, the insurance, and Scott will talk to you about the investing side. We can certainly make a difference for struggling communities, for corporate conduct, and for the environment. So banks, credit cards, insurance, under those conditions, you're giving your money to someone else, and they can use that money as they see fit. It might align with your values or might not, but you do not have control over that. Your job is to find the right companies to do business with. With investing, you are in charge of your investments. You can make the choice of how to invest your money, where to invest your money, and you can see whether you want to invest fossil fuel free, whether you want to avoid the private prison industry, which I consider an absolute abomination. There are a number of other things you can, on the one side, avoid, and on the other side, enhance. So let me talk to you about your bank account. Next, Scott, please. Because where you bank matters. When you put your money into a savings account, a checking account, for the checking account, the bank has to keep as much of it liquid and ready for you as they possibly can get away with, or rather take as much out of it as they think they can get away with. Your bank uses that money to make money by lending to other people and businesses at charging interest. They can also act as, in the case up here of Citizens Bank, to underwrite bond issues and broker those issues and, of course, collect a fee on that. And I refer to Citizens Bank because currently in the Boston Metro, we have a campaign to move money out of Citizens because they are a major source of funding for the private prison industries, specifically CoreCivic and Geo Group. I don't know if you've heard of them, but these are two of the biggest for-profit prison groups that are providing ICE with facilities, and in theory also handling the guarding and supervision of the internees. And as you know, there are tremendous abuses taking place under those circumstances. So and that's the reason why we're trying to get, we in the Boston Metro, and the Boston, Rhode Island region, are trying to get Citizens Bank to drop their support through credit line and bond brokerage for these private prison groups. So the bank collects money on these fees and interests and pays you interest for using that money to make loans. Next. The largest, Scott, next one, please. The largest banks, the mega banks, disproportionately finance fossil fuel projects. And currently, interestingly enough, back to my hobby horse about private prisons, the mega banks don't seem to be involved in that, to my great relief. But they are providing a huge amount of money in the form of credit lines, bond issues, etc., for the fossil fuel industry. And as you can see here, these figures are as of 2020, I believe. It hasn't gotten any better. You do have a choice. You don't have to bank with JP Morgan, Citibank, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Chase. You can look around your area for community banks, for credit unions. These are mission-driven banks. You could also look for CDFC, Community Development Financial Corporations, CDFC, yeah, that can use your money to finance local small businesses, housing, social services, environmental works, all local. And there's some examples here, and if you'd like a better list that is more appropriate to your neighborhood, go to greenamerica.org, and in the little search box at the top with the magnifying glass, just put in banks, and you'll see quite a list. You'll see a map, in fact. Yeah, right here, Green America's Get a Better Bank. You can fill in your zip code, and they'll show you the available banks around that may be B Corps, low-income designated credit unions, minority deposit institutions, all of which give the same services as the mega banks, very similar interest rates, and in some cases even better interest rates. I don't know how it is in California, but around here, some of the credit unions actually will give you modest interest on your checking account balance. Next, please. So I urge you, if you're in a mega bank, break up with it. There are a few things a few steps that are open, important to carry out. I think the most important one is making that list of automatic payments and withdrawals, as well as your automatic payments before you do anything else, and get those set up in the new bank you've chosen. And then after you've gone through these other steps of getting copies of bank records and setting things up, then you can transfer your funds to your new account and close your old account. But make sure that that mega bank knows why you're leaving. Let them know that you don't like where they're putting your money. Now, again, credit cards charge fees. And they also charge interest rates that would make the 1950s and 60s mafia embarrassed. There are cards that are charging close to 30% on any open balance. Some of them charge a fee. Some of them are without fee, and you can find those. Again, Green America is your source, greenamerica.org. You may want to keep a card that gives you travel points or reimbursements, but do remember that whatever they give you will be a fraction of what they're sucking out of everybody else from interest, as well as from the merchants that are handling this. So you'll see on this slide, banks made $126.4 billion in transition fees in 2022, and I can promise you it's more today. Next. So if you want to know about what your card is, there are 2 points to look at: the branding and the issuing, which are different. The front of the card will show you the brand. In this case, they're giving you an example of Amazon, a Prime card. The issuing bank is on the back of the card. The issuing bank here is Chase in this illustration. Next. There are cards that you can use that are better. Most community banks and credit unions issue their own card or issue it through one of the national groups like Elan Financial. And so, when you are considering changing, find out if they have a card. And if they don't, you can also go to other sources. Next. Here's a group of them, and again, greenamerica.org. You can go to that little magnifying glass and put in credit cards. The credit card I use is not here. It's called Better World. But it does the same thing. It uses the fees that it gets from the processing and donates them. Every year you get a choice of different socially responsible or charities to contribute to. So, insurance. I, for one, we can't live without insurance, I'll admit, but I basically hate the concept of the industry because it's an industry with a business plan that says collect premium, don't pay benefit if you can possibly get away with it. And far too many do. But again, insurance is right up there, especially the property and homeowners, because of the changes in our climate, the enormous storms we've had, the wildfires that have taken place in many places in the country. And they're not going to get any better until we really get a handle on carbon. So insurance companies deal with these problems by raising the rates or restricting your coverage or not renewing policies. Rates have gone up 35% since 2024, apparently, in the last 2 years. They also serve to insure the fossil fuel companies, and they also invest that money that they collect in premium because they want to make money on the money you're handing them. So they're investing it. And many of these larger corporations, as you can see from this chart, this is specifically fossil fuel investments, but they'll be also investing in many other things you might not want to see your money going into. There are alternatives. Again, greenamerica.org has a great list of them. They've got a climate smart insurance directory. Once again, just go to that website, go to the magnifying glass, put in insurance. You can get both home and auto insurance. There are a lot of smaller regional companies in every state. You don't have to invest in climate chaos along with them. And as I said, you can find them through Green America. Scott, next one. The best shopping for property or auto insurance. Call at least 3 independent agents, as you would for almost anything. Shop around, compare rates, compare companies. Again, Green America will help telling you which, the companies you're being offered. Are they investing in fossil fuels? Are they investing in tobacco? Probably not anymore. Are they investing in gambling resorts, private prisons? And on the other hand, are they investing in renewable energy? That's the kind of thing you want to look for. And very often you can save a lot of money by switching. So, Scott.
Thank you.
Now let them know about investing with your values.
Hi, I'm Scott Kadish, a certified financial planner and financial advising, specializing in environmentally responsible investing. And thank you so much for coming out tonight. I know how busy everyone is. So David and I and Deb really appreciate that. Before I begin, I just want to take a quick poll. You can raise your hand either virtually or real if any of these statements apply to you. I power my home with renewable electricity. Okay. I drive an electric car. I maintain a vegetarian, vegan. What, Janet?
It's a hybrid.
Okay, that counts. I maintain a vegetarian, vegan diet.
Ooh. Well, no, fish.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't eat much meat, but
I do one or more of these activities because I'm worried how global warming will impact my children or grandchildren.
What are the activities?
The ones I just named. So, some or all of these choices you have made because of your concern about the impact of global warming. I'm now going to discuss how you can make an environmental impact with how you invest. So, investing with your values or socially responsible investing has been around for at least 5 decades. I guess as the way that we know it. Starting with the Pax World Fund in 1971, today there are now several hundred socially responsible mutual funds. So how exactly does socially responsible investing make an environmental impact? There are 3 main ways socially responsible funds make an impact. First, they keep your money out of environmentally dangerous industries. Socially responsible funds have both exclusionary and written fossil fuel-free policies. Second, socially responsible funds work directly with companies they own to influence their environmental policies, practices, and disclosures. The successes of these efforts are published annually by the fund company's shareholder advocacy report. And third, socially responsible funds are committed to owning companies whose core businesses create sustainable products and services. Socially responsible funds disclose via written policy and publish white papers on how they incorporate sustainability and ESG data into their investment processes. Now, on the right side, I've listed some of the socially responsible funds companies that have been around for more than a quarter century. And what makes these fund companies such as Green Century, Impacts, Asset Management, Calvert stand apart from the Vanguards, the Fidelities, and the BlackRocks. These mutual fund companies demonstrate environmental impact in these 3 ways I've just described. Okay, so I know we've definitely social responsible investing is a broad topic that covers everything from prisons, like David spoke about, to investing fossil fuel free. So why invest fossil fuel free? Because there are so many environmentally responsible investment options today. makes it easier for investors to stop supporting the industry that has driven man-made climate change. There are tens of thousands of people like you and I who've already divested, as well as more than 1,700 institutions, including the Vatican, the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, and the California pension system, to name a few. They have committed or have already fully divested from fossil fuels. The Vatican, unfortunately, while they are encouraging the Catholic Church to divest, they haven't done altogether themselves, but they do have a goal. Finally, there are real financial and performance risks from global warming, as we know, that could cause the value of fossil fuel companies to plummet in value. A question some people ask me is, how much performance do I have to sacrifice by investing with my values? So as SRI has become more mainstream and more research has been done, the findings to this question are that you have to give up a little or nothing in performance to invest with your values. This is a chart here that shows over the past 15 years a tale of two indexes that track the European stock market, one with and one sans fossil fuel companies without. And the index without fossil fuels, which is the blue line, outperforms the one with fossil fuels. So it's one of many metrics that you can see that shows about socially responsible investing performing well. Not only does divesting from fossil fuels make sense from a value standpoint, it also makes good financial sense. Stranded assets is the financial risk that a fossil fuel company is forced to prematurely write off their fossil fuel reserves, which could result in a decrease to the company's value or share price. In 2025, and we saw from David's graph that 2024 actually was worse. But in 2025, there were $23 billion weather and climate disasters, including the LA wildfires that we all know about, that caused more than $60 billion in damages. Political, legal, and regulatory change due to these continued huge billion-dollar weather-related disasters could make stranded assets a reality much sooner than the markets are currently pricing in. A study done by IFA, which is the Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis, found that the fossil fuel sector has underperformed the S&P 500 in 7 of the last 10 years through the end of 2024, delivering both the lowest performance and highest volatility of any sector. So, what are some ways to invest with your environmental values? 3 main options I'm going to talk about. There are a few others, but these are the ones that most people have access to. Are mutual funds, exchange-traded funds, or individual stocks. Now, mutual fund, this is kind of investing 101, so you may know this already, is a basket of individual stocks, bonds, or combination of the two that can be actively or passively managed, where an exchange-traded fund is a basket of stocks or bonds, generally passive in nature. It could have potential tax efficiencies and can be traded like a stock throughout the day. And finally, individual stocks give you the ability to own part of a publicly traded company. Investing in a single stock, however, comes with more risk. So as a general rule of thumb, and I think David would probably agree, if you're going to invest in stocks, instead of putting all your eggs in one basket, you should invest in a portfolio of at least 15 to 20 stocks across a broad range of industries and countries. So retirement accounts, as we know, are one of the main places for you to be able to invest in socially responsible funds. You could have a current or former employer 401k or 403b. In that case, you have a fixed menu of investment choices. Some firms, you maybe have one socially responsible fund, but like I said earlier, chances are it's probably going to be more like a Vanguard or a Fidelity as opposed to a Green Century or Impacts. With an IRA or Roth IRA, you can invest in any of the SRI fund families that I mentioned earlier, either on your own or with the help of a financial advisor. Because many socially responsible mutual funds are actively managed, and this is a heads up, they may have capital gains distributions at the end of the year. Often, these funds are better suited for retirement accounts. And if anyone wants to know more about why, I'm happy to talk about that. Okay, so a great free resource to measure the funds that you have in your investment accounts is asyousow.org. Invest your values. The site uses a letter grades A to F for more than 3,000 mutual funds on 7 different metrics, including fossil fuel free and deforestation free funds. If you want a more in-depth analysis, and there's again, there are some other free resources. David mentioned Green America. It has some good articles on socially responsible investing, and there's books out there. If you're looking, so there's great resources. If you're looking for a more in-depth analysis of measuring how well your environmental values show up in your current investments, that's something, a financial advisor, I have the ability to. We have special tools we pay for that allow us to look deeper into the portfolio and do a deeper analysis. I'd like to end the presentation with a quote that some of you may know and have heard from Rabbi Tarfon. I think, we talked at the very beginning about the ability to try to perfect the capitalist system and how it's the best thing that we have, but it's, kind of feels pretty crummy, especially now. But at the end, I think we still all have a duty. And this Rabbi Tarfon quote, it is not your duty to finish the work, but neither are you at liberty to neglect it. So again, I'm going to thank you for your time. And now we're happy to answer any questions. Or now you know everything you needed to know about greening your finances and, you're
Banking,
ready
credit
to
cards,
credit cards,
insurance.
insurance. There's a lot there. I was saying again before a few of you jumped on, David and I both attended a socially responsible investor conference that was yesterday in Boston. And, I think it was interesting to hear some of the trends. I mean, some of the people who spoke were pretty blunt and said, things aren't really going too well right now, especially for, our whole movement, because of the pressure of, that's being applied by this administration on across the board on a lot of environmental things we all know about.
There have been rule changes at the Securities and Exchange Commission that make
Yes.
a lot of what we do, or I did, Scott does, more difficult than it had been, more difficult than it needs to be.
Yes. But I think it is a strong community where, there are, I didn't throw in this number, but there are some numbers out there that show you, in spite of maybe the pushback or the feeling that things are going in the wrong direction. I mean, there's so much momentum that was already in place for sustainable investing, for, the biggest firms that manage the most money, the states, the pension funds, that the commitments towards divesting and all the 1.5 degree measurements and the commitments that company have made. One of the things that was refreshing to hear is that even though, we're not hearing so much, especially this is what's called shareholder advocacy and shareholder proposal season, where a lot of, there's being a lot of referendums and, questions and policies that are, that the socially responsible community is trying to push companies to do. One refreshing thing that a couple of the people that work specifically on these, with companies is that they still understand the long-term vision of sustainability and that it's good for business. And that even though they may be going below the radar a bit, they're very much communicating and working with like the companies I talked about who were there yesterday, Calvert and Green Century and Impacts, to move the needle because they understand that these are real risks, the climate risk, um, everything, even stuff around diversity, equity, and inclusion. These are things that are good for business, and even though the current administration does not think that way, um, business is still they're still moving. So they're
There,
moving in that direction.
there's actually a somewhat of a bright side to the insanity in the Persian Gulf and the Straits of Hormuz right now, and that is that most of the countries on this planet have realized they cannot rely on fossil fuels any longer, and much more money right now is flowing into renewable alternatives. Um, in Africa, the largest source of new energy is solar with battery backup. The advances in battery technology are really quite staggering. Most of them, the United States, because of its current perverse administration, has forfeited leadership to China. China is way ahead of us on battery technology. They are now able to produce an electric car with a battery that's light enough to power it for 700 miles on a single charge. And there are a number of other things that have happened within battery technology that hopefully we will catch up to once we recover from the present administrative perversion. Let me put it that way. One of the problems with lithium batteries is that lithium is highly reactive and therefore flammable. There are silicon and sodium alternatives that are being developed that are going to be much more stable. Perhaps not as efficient because, well, what's not mentioned in my biography is that I also have a bachelor's in chemistry. So I was about to talk about electronegativity, but most people wouldn't understand me. So I'll leave it at that.
That's good. Other things, speaking of technology, because that is a huge hot topic, especially with AI too. There was, in the energy intensiveness of, what's coming on, and the concern that a lot of the leading companies that had made these very bold climate commitments, we're talking about the Googles and the Apples and the Microsofts, really, were leading the whole charge. Um, so there was some discussion around that and, a little bit of concern that maybe they'll back down because, there is such a ferocious demand for AI, as we all know, and that, they're going to have to succumb to, for business purposes. But there's a lot of technology as well that's being worked on around AI and the uses of water, hopefully to reduce and recycle and reuse water that, is through I guess, the cooling of these huge, according to one shareholder advocate, we're talking about like a Walmart supercenter piled on top of a Walmart supercenter. I mean, these are the size of these AI centers that are coming on board, and whether it's competing for water with citizens. I mean, there's a whole host of, of issues that, being part of these funds, that they're going to be working on these things, these issues that, if you're concerned about, they're because I think while across the board, some of the fund companies like Green Century is more of an activist, owned by a nonprofit, and has a more activist and maybe a little more aggressive approach to shareholder advocacy. Um, Calvert, which ironically was bought by Morgan Stanley, but kind of remains its separate identity, sees itself more as just an educator on these issues because a lot of this still evolves around financial risk, as I talked about with, you know, um, climate, weather disasters, and sea level rise, and things that these socially responsible fund companies are going and telling the companies that, hey, you got to watch out for this. We own your stock, and we not only care about, the planet, but there's also profit at stake too. So they're being smart and how they're approaching um, a lot of these big companies that so it's interesting, even in this environment, there are real risks out there that we all are aware of.
Yeah, I would hope, and I'm not speaking remotely as a financial professional, but I would hope that all of these funds, anybody who is claiming to be socially responsible, would draw a bright red line around anything that is AI, as well as anything that starts spouting propaganda about small modular reactors, which is how, like, the magic fairy dust that these centers are claiming will get them the energy that they need without somehow disrupting, like, our ecosystem and resources. But the comment that I really wanted to make was, so again, I am not an expert on this. I'm not even super well versed, but one thing that has come across my radar screen in the last couple of years is boycotts. And that's something that boycotts of not only like institutions like Citizens Bank, but also certain credit cards and places like, whether it's Amazon or Whole Foods or Walmart. And there's been a lot of pressure on people. Sometimes it's about income levels, and sometimes it's just about what is available to you because of the concentration slash monopolization in the market. And I am hoping, so one thing that occurred to me as I was reading about the evolution of credit cards, which is a fascinating story, which I'm sure you guys could say more about than I could, is that they are extremely sensitive to every cent that they get. And so we can make a point, not so much if we can just boycott in total, that's great, let's do that. But we can also just spend less money with them, and not even spend less money in total, but give cash. So if we're spending $100 on our credit card, if we spend like even $10 of that in cash, and then they're not getting the fees off of the 90 off of that, then they start, if they see that enough, they start going, whoa, whoa, whoa. And that's another way to make a point. If you guys have anything to add to that, that would be great.
Well, let me say the best answer for that is shop locally and shop in cash, because you're supporting local businesses and they are not going to have to pay processing fees if you pay them in cash.
I agree. We have a little dilemma with ourselves, with our JCAN. It's so easy, and a lot of nonprofits do this, but it's easy to take, credit cards as donations, right? But they tack on that fee at the end. That feels kind of yucky, and I mean, but it's convenient, and nonprofits want money, and we don't get that many checks anymore, right? As I'll attest to, and so keeping that alive, I think is important. But again, people are busy, and it's easy just to tap that credit card or your phone, and right. I mean, they really are. It takes effort, much like what socially responsible investing is. It takes a bit of effort to go a little bit further and look under the hood.
Obviously, there's doing as much as we can in cash, and yet at the same time there are things that either because of that automated feature or what things that we're buying online, things like that. And then we've got the credit cards over on the other side and the egregious overcharging and all of that we're pretty much stuck with. Hasn't anybody yet wised up to the fact that there's got to be a better way that is more socially responsible, that gives the features of working with transactions digitally without piracy, shall we say?
That was the thought behind cryptocurrency, or the way it was presented at the beginning. But you can always trust the human mind to find some devious way of exploiting something. Yeah, the convenience of credit cards are very seductive. And they are a very convenient way both for the donor and for the nonprofit to make the payment, to give the support. But there's so much else we have to do in our economic lives that I'll go back to what I said earlier. When you can, shop locally and pay cash. It reinforces another interesting aspect of democracy in that it supports more competition between more local, real people as opposed to massive corporations.
And I think cash, like reinforcing the use of cash itself, is very important, because you're starting to find, at least near where I live and walk around, that there are a bunch of places that won't take cash, and to say nothing of being able to get a paper receipt. And I think the more that we insist on saying, no, this paper dollar is still worth something, the more we can keep it from going the tragic way of the penny.
Right. Well, and one of the things that I'm seeing a social trend, at least out here on the left coast, is um, people say, and myself included, the transition that I've made is to keep enough cash with me that when I go and purchase something, yes, admittedly with my credit card, I tip in cash.
Yes, yeah. That way, the service person actually gets the money instead of the owner of the business. Well done,
Right.
well done.
One
Kola
small
kavod.
step. One small step.
Right. That's all we're doing, whether it's writing a check, paying cash tip, little things, right? Multiplied many times over, make a movement.
Yes,
A,
and
a lot.
one that credit card companies will notice and be very upset by in the aggregate.
Can I ask an unrelated question? Well, you alluded to it, that how the Trump administration wants to allow companies to only report their earnings every 6 months instead of every 3 months. So I believe you alluded to that. So how do you feel about that?
It's funny. Paul Pullman, who I don't know if anybody knows who that is, was
I heard the name.
yeah, he's a former CEO of Unilever. And his argument, which is, I know the reason Trump's doing it's probably not for social good or for the way that companies are valued. But the irony, and whether Trump knows this or not, is that Pullman was a big advocate. Unilever was, he ran the company for 10 years. He ran it extremely profitably, and he ran it with a mantra of giving back and giving more back than the company was taking, right? And he gave examples throughout the book. And one of the things he kind of fought tooth and nail about was not to have quarterly earnings meetings, because it held the company to a standard that was more demanded by the market and the stock price than a healthy, let the company grow and not be so at the whim of all the stock analysts that were bashing the company. So he wanted like annual, once a year, like Warren Buffett gives his annual letter. So I did know that about Trump, and when he said it, I was kind of scratching my head, like, you know,
Oh, it helps him reduce the staff at the IRS.
well,
It
of course,
reduces the workload. It really
there
does.
was a different
Yeah. And
reason for it.
I saw the upside as one of the trends in our society has been shorter and shorter term thinking. And it's one of the factors that has gotten us into the mess we're in with climate,
Yeah,
because people are thinking, the next quarter rather than the next year, the next decade.
right. It's our whole mindset, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's the difference between shopping locally or getting the cheapest price, writing a check versus cash. It's like we're so kind of wound up and to
Writing the
feel
check ain't bad. It's the
right.
credit card writing the check ain't so bad.
No,
It's the
it's
credit
not.
card that is.
Oh, I agree. That's what I'm saying. I think just the speed at which we move and go, and AI is only exacerbating that, making us more productive and less thoughtful, right? Because now we have a brain, like this thing that's almost like our iPhone. That's at least how I feel. I
I
don't know how other
challenge that
people
more
feel.
productive. I challenge that. It gives us
Well,
the illusion.
true. That could be the case. Um, that is the promise of it,
I
right?
I feel there's an opportunity for us to blame Milton Friedman here, but it would take too long to get to, so everybody probably.
It does,
He's
yes.
so badly misquoted. I don't want to add to it.
We would have a webinar on Milton Friedman. That I'd attend. That would be fascinating.
Barely can.
Oh, guys.
PBS did a special on Milton Friedman, like a big, long, in the 80s. It's online. You can watch it on YouTube. Yes, he had a lot to do with where we're at, in terms of the capitalism that we're living on right now. His neoliberal, way he wrote and communicated, and he was responsible for a lot of why we're where we are today, for sure.
Well, he's been misinterpreted and misquoted almost as much as the Bible has.
True.
It,
Yes.
So I have another question, because I do get all these things to vote my proxy, and there are always all these shareholder proposals. And as far as I can tell, because they never report what happens, as far as I can tell, they almost never are voted in favor.
good.
They almost never win.
No, I mean there are multiple layers of of issues kind of surrounding that, because even if it gets and I this was an example yesterday, just trying to think of um, if it was eBay. It was one company that one of these socially responsible firms was leading a shareholder proposal, and they were able to get um, 30% positive, which is a huge amount,
That
voting in
wasn't enough
favor
for
of a
him.
shareholder resolution that, that was pro-social, pro-environment. It's kind of like a big wake up to the company, but clearly, because of David was referring to the new SEC rules that the SEC isn't the one deciding whether or not to put a follow-up resolution because they wanted to keep at it and keep getting more momentum. Now, the company that decides the company that that you're filing the shareholder resolution for can basically say we don't want you to put it on there. So what this was actually Green Century, what they did in a creative roundabout way, they created their own proxy voting system outside the system, and they created enough commotion. Um, it was right in our backyard. It's BJ's. I mean, not in the West Coast, but BJ's is right in outside of Boston. And it was BJ's that initially rejected
The
a
proposal. Yeah.
proposal. David, you may recall this from
Yeah.
yesterday,
Yeah.
that because of, they were creative around, going kind of outside the proxy system because it still created pressure that BJ's didn't want to look bad. So in the end, they were able to get BJ's to agree to put it on this new shareholder proposal. Um, and the other problem though right now we're having with that, they said, because again, it's still ultimately up to the company to make a verbal public commitment. And right now the environment is such that it's very difficult. Bank America, particularly, was another one that, by all intents and purposes, they don't have the fossil fuel financing going for them. They're pretty yucky when it comes to that, but they have a very, diverse workforce. And but they, when they were approached by, I believe it was Calvert, and they want to disclose their workforce diversity, and they have, I think, a pretty good track record of that. They were afraid to put it on to comply because they were afraid the Trump administration would come after them. And so it's really interesting, that unfortunately there are repercussions um, for companies who do want to comply and do well and get it. And, the pressure when you have power. They don't want to have to, spend millions of dollars in court, fighting a frivolous lawsuit, like, right? Most of what he throws together. And so yeah, I mean, that's kind of a long answer, Janet, of does your proxy votes actually come out? I mean, it should. You can contact investor relations. If it's was it a single stock that you owned?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know if that directly addresses your question, more than talking about just the overall environment of proxy voting and these part of what was the special sauce of these fund companies, which was directly working with companies on social and environmental issues and getting them to make these changes.
There are different forms of shareholder activism as well.
Right.
Not necessarily at the shareholder meeting, not necessarily voting proxies. Pressure can be brought to bear on the administrative committees of the various corporations if there are enough people behind it.
Right.
So it doesn't. That's one way around the current SEC rules, which require a much higher threshold to bring an idea forward to the entire shareholder population. But we've already run just a little over an hour. Are there any other questions out there?
We're
Well,
Yeah, I mean, Deb had us till if people wanted to go longer, we've
yeah.
got the bandwidth, but yeah, I think we dug in nice. I think we good questions.
Yeah, and this will be uh recorded, I believe, and we'll have this posted on our website, and we also have Scott's information both in the chat, and we can also post it on the recap page when it's ready, so that people can contact you for the deep dive into their current portfolio and how they can hopefully make it more human rights focused.
Great.
Yes, I mean, we have one of the great things about the technology is we have some fantastic tools that have come out. Uh, you know, uh, Not so much AI, more just aggregating data. And it's yeah, some of the people were there at our meeting yesterday. Uh, some wonderful tools that we have now to really parse companies down to a very granular level in terms of what they're doing on a whole host of environmental, social values, you name it. It's yeah, it's
On the one hand, it's wonderful, and on the other, it's overwhelming.
I
Part
concur
of why I
there. I
retired.
concur. It's a lot. There's a lot there.
Bye,
Um,
Maria.
but it's pretty amazing some of the stuff that's now accessible probably only once upon a time at an institutional, very, you know, big, you got to be a big institution to have it. And now, an individual investor who wants to, you know, go down to a single stock level and go stock by stock and decide yay or nay because of, their particular values set, you can do that for not a lot of money. So it's pretty amazing how quickly that's transformed.
Okay, friends,
Excellent.
it's great to have this platform, but it's getting late, and I have other things I have to get to this evening.
All right,
Okay.
David.
So,
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you guys so
thank
much for
you.
joining us, and we'll see you later.